welcome to the 83rd episode of the Manor Podcast. I'm your co-host, Roger Bodee, joined as always with my best friend and other co-host, Michael Hamilton. Michael, you're going to be okay. I know this is a lot of people on the podcast right now. I know it's scary, but we're going to get through this. I believe in you. How do you feel?
A little bit overwhelmed. Two guests at once. That's a lot of guests, you know.
I know. I believe in you. We're going to get through this because we're going to talk about sorcery this episode. Episode is going to be all about Sorcery-Con that just happened recently. We're going to get kind of the ideas behind why it happened, how it happened, when it happened, where it happened, all the great questions of how it happened. And Zach's going to give his perspective about how he won the limited tournament and ninth bubbled the constructed tournament. What'd you finish there?
I have no idea where I finished. I was 4-2 in constructed. I don't know.
A winning record, a solid winning record in constructed.
That's right. Yeah, close, but no cigar.
Accurate.
And then just to kind of awkwardly get this out of the way at the top of the podcast too, full disclosure, Michael and I have been working behind the scenes with the team at Eric Curiosa, and we are now internal playtesters for them. So we can't give full insights and kind of opinions for everything that went on, which is why we have these wonderful guests on to help us do that for us. So we don't accidentally tell them how to break any future metas that we totally know and solved. Right, Michael?
Just blink twice if you've seen all the Arthurian Legends cards. You know what I mean? Oh, shoot. All right. I got questions.
These questions will not be answered.
They will not be answered. I can tell you there's cards. There's cards in the set if that's groundbreaking news. I hope that doesn't break my NDA.
That love potion. Yeah, we could talk about that, right? It's been spoiled.
Love potion, round table.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They also showed King Arthur, right?
Yeah.
What does he do? What does he do, Roger?
I don't know.
I don't know what's been spoiled. I almost rattled it off. But I was like, wait a second.
So close.
I might be being duped here because he knows that Arthurian legends. There has to be a King Arthur, obviously. But
all right,
maybe there's not. You know,
Merlin.
Maybe they overlooked him somehow.
At least while we're recording on the podcast, I will not try to trick you.
Thank you.
I can't promise in the future. You know, when we're testing together and stuff, I can't promise anything.
I appreciate it. I'd like to keep my relationship with them going if at all possible. But
I didn't know that was official. I'm excited for you guys.
That's
You're
awesome.
Some of the best card game players I know, so that's awesome to have you on that team.
Yeah, I just had a chat with Simon a couple weeks ago, and it's kind of an awkward time because all of their work on Arthurian Legends is done, and that's basically going off to print now. So we couldn't really give any feedback or anything like that on that set itself. So we're going to be kind of trying to help them figure out how that meta is going to shake out, maybe where they can go from there.
Exciting.
But back to the present day, Dave,
we're actually talking about the past, right?
Yeah. This is a little bit in the past now.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about why you made Sorcery-Con happen, Dave?
Hey, if you want the full backstory about it, you're going to have to wait a little bit. Team Covenant is working on a documentary about the convention and sort of how it came to be. But I can give you the quick rundown. Basically, we're really lucky in the Seattle area. There's a whole lot of sorcery players around here, and we've had a really active community basically since the Kickstarter delivered. It's been just really great. We've got a whole lot of great pillars of the community up here who've been working hard to really keep the community going. So when Alex West came around, he actually ran a draft just before beta came out. And, I was one of the players that showed up for the draft. And after the draft, we were talking about we need to have a convention. We could do something. We have enough players in this area that if we sell like 20 tickets to local players, we like rent out a place, we can, we're not losing too much money at that point. And it'll be an extremely fun time. And maybe we'll even get some more people to join that aren't part of the regular play groups. And so we looked at, I guess Alex had already booked a venue by the time I joined in and started helping him, but we started looking at like pricing out and like what all can we do at this event. We kind of we wanted to make sure we didn't lose too much money on it. So we're like, okay, let's say if we budget this, where if we fill about half the capacity of the space, then we'll pretty much break even on the venture, and we'll be all right. And if we go over that, we can, start talking about adding more stuff to the convention, more events, more side events, that kind of thing. And so we were like, okay, if we can fit about 72 people in here for a tournament, that gives us about 35, 36 players is like break even point. And that'll be awesome. If we get 35 people here, that's going to be great. And so we started, we put everything together, put the tickets on sale. And I think everyone now knows, like, we probably should have aimed it higher than that. Because
I might have gone if there was room. I looked at my calendar and I was like,
I wish we could have gotten everyone there, man. It was a whole lot of fun, and yeah, we sold out tickets. We were hoping to sell out tickets by the end of January, and the event's mid-February, and we ended up selling out all of the tickets within a couple weeks just before Christmas. Like,
that's crazy.
Yeah, it was overwhelming. It was nuts.
So there's definitely going to be a Sorcery-Con 2 is what I'm hearing. It'll be a little bit bigger.
Don't worry, we're already talking about how we want to move forward, and
awesome.
Provide this kind of event that hopefully is something that'll appeal to all kinds of players. Like, yeah, we want to appeal to the more competitive-minded players. In that, we want to have larger tournaments, but we also want to have a whole bunch of side events, because Sorcery, like you kind of mentioned in the intro, it's an interesting game. It's got a really, really kind of diverse background of people playing it. People who have not played any TCGs in years and years, to say the least. People who have never played a competitive TCG. People who have never played a TCG in a game store are showing up to Sorcery-Con and playing at Sorcery-Con. There were more than a couple of people came up to me like during the convention, and they were like, hey, this is the first time I've ever been to a gaming convention. This is totally wild. This is super fun. Thanks for doing this. So like, it's all kind of overwhelming, and we want to make sure that we don't forget like that there's a lot of those players in addition to the Zach Bunns of the world.
Yeah, speaking of the Zach Bunns of the world, is that why you were able to just go and crush everybody the whole weekend, Zach? Because you're just this grizzled, seasoned TCG veteran that's just there to show the rookies the ropes?
Well, he didn't win both events.
What'd you say?
He didn't win both events, so
yeah, that's right.
He was going easy on folks the first day.
Yeah, I have no idea how I won that event. It was a miracle, honestly.
But did you think the room was overall like competitively solid? Did you like feel like that like newbiness in the air, or did you feel like the room was pretty adequate?
So I think from I would compare it to so I played a lot of I played a lot of indie card games, and I played a lot of indie card games even competitively. And so like I think back to my days playing like Star Wars LCG, and Game of Thrones LCG, and the big events for that would be 70 to 100 people. And the way I always felt with Star Wars LCG, like I think the biggest worlds they had was 150 or something. Was that out of the 150 for that game particularly, there were probably 20 or 30 people that could win that tournament. And so then like inevitably, at some point in the tournament, in the Swiss or the cut or whatever, you're down to just those players. And that's one of the things, like a game like Fab, where you have 1,000-person calling, or a world championship with people that had to qualify and all this stuff. One of the differences is that at that level for that kind of event, the average skill level is definitely higher. Like the floor, I guess, would be a better way of saying that on skill is higher. And there was, so you have sorcery and then you have Sorcery-Con, right? It's two really important variables here. One is sorcery in general. And I said this a lot throughout the weekend, having discussions with everybody. It's the first card game I've experienced that instead of saying, here's a competitive card game and the kitchen table players can figure this out, it's here's a kitchen table card game. And if people want to be competitive about it, the competitive players will figure it out, which as a competitive player, I know that's true. Competitive people will find a way to compete if they really want to. But obviously, like the game itself lends to a very different culture, I think, than a lot of games I've played. And then the event itself, but even I love it, right? This is on the stream this week, we talked about it, but this bottom up organized play approach which is like, hey, players, you guys can figure this out. Do what you want to do. I didn't even know until I was in the top 4 finals of the sealed draft event that there were actually any prizes on the line. Like I was clueless. And then, someone was like, oh, like, I think it was after I won my top 8 game, my opponent Zafar was like, oh, you get the crown sorcerer. And I was like, what? And I don't know. And then I later found out like that's actually a somewhat hard card. And then there's like the champion card too, which is beautiful. It doesn't do anything. It just has awesome art on it. So it's a long-winded way of saying, I was surprised at the average skill level, actually.
Okay.
It didn't feel like, and a piece of this too is like how much I prepared or didn't prepare for this event. So who knows where, I don't even know where my skill level is at, right? That's why I've been playing card games for like 25 years and I've been competing most of those years. It's not surprising that I'm able to win an event. But I didn't go in with any expectations, like, at all. And I kind of assumed I would have like an okay tournament. Mm-hmm. So 4-2 at Constructed seemed about right. It felt right. And there were some really, really, really good players in the room, but the whole game is sort of feels to me unsolved. And a lot of people there have played a lot of card games. A lot of people are like old school Magic players that played for a decade and left because a lot of reasons. And then now, they're getting back into it. I can't even cover all that. But then there are a ton of people never been to a tournament, never been to a convention, that kind of stuff. And some of those people doing quite well. So it felt more like the 2010s indie TCG communities I was a part of. But one of my favorite things was even all the way through the top 8 of the draft event. Again, the pricing here compared to, I don't know, like a Fab Pro Tour or a Call-In or something is so much not the thing. Mm-hmm. And so it's just I love the Fab community and I don't have any concerns about the competitiveness there, but like it is definitely different. Like the kind of people that showed up, the experiences, even the vibe and how much fun people were having. Like it was a really cool event. I was happy to be a part of it.
Awesome. And then I guess on that note, though, around like the structuring of the event. So in order to have like an actual like competition, people generally have to know how the rules of that competition are going to operate. So, Dave, did you have like a Magic Gathering Flesh and Blood has like floor judges or people who can like make rulings or enforce the rules on different levels? Was there anything like that happening in the convention, or was it just kind of the play by the
no, we let everyone figure it out themselves. We were super lucky to have several of the judges from the actual online league it's never been an official Eric's Curiosa thing, but it is the largest like group of competitively minded players playing online, I think. So yeah, several of the judges were here in Seattle, either playing in the event or Zach Attack came in and he was just the head judge for the entire event and just hung out and absolutely killed it. I am also one of the judges in the online league, so I was there to help him, help back him up, for the first day or the Saturday Constructed event. But he didn't even need me. This is a 66-person event, and he absolutely killed it by himself. Like, I hardly ever had to run over and like help with another judge call. So we were really, really lucky to have just a lot of very skilled and knowledgeable players there, folks who know the game inside and out, and in many cases probably know how the game works better than Eric's Curiosa staff do. So yeah, it was awesome.
Fair enough. Were there any like contentious calls? Was anybody like half flowing a chaos switch, like, or like, or did you go by birthday cake rules?
We went by the birthday candle rules.
Okay.
There was one player who he didn't know about the birthday candle rule, and the judge had to tell him partway through it. But his opponent was like, "No, dude, it's all good. Just do it again. Try it." And he blew it a second time and blew it off the table. So like it fizzled anyway. But yeah.
Fair enough.
I was both surprised and really gratified to see how often people were playing Chaos Orb at the event. And everyone, whenever it happened, people were like pulling out their cameras and recording it. Like everyone seemed excited to see the card actually being played, and there didn't seem to be any issues with it.
Hell yeah.
We didn't get any real contentious judge calls the entire event. It was great.
Now, I will say things I loved as a player. You had a Chaos Twister ruler. So anytime Chaos Twister is played, it'd be like, get the ruler.
Yep.
And like a judge comes and it's like, gotta be at least a foot off the table.
Yep.
And then one of my favorite moments, two things I want to say as a player on that structure. One was just generally, I played a good amount of Sorcery. I played a lot of card games. I don't know that I've had to call a judge for a rules question more than I did for Sorcery. Because you get into these like really weird scenarios or just ask people around you kind of a situation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the vibe was just so, and you also have the golden rule, right? Which is, it's like, hey, how do we think this should work? It's like, let's just go with that. And then we can ask a judge later. That was happening a lot, especially in the sealed piece and people would lean over from the next table asking questions because you're seeing a bunch of cards that a lot of people haven't seen, hitting the table in that kind of limited format. But one of my favorite moments, that if this happened at a Fab event, I think Fab players would riot, and I loved it. It was a highlight of the event for me. So they have this microphone, this PA system. We're heading into round 6 of the constructed tournament, right? And so with 66 people, 6 rounds, X2 is how you get in the top 8, but there's only going to be a couple of those that make it, and the rest of the X2s like me are not going to make it. And so David gets up there on the mic. And he's like, it reminds me, it's funny, this coming weekend, I'm going to North Carolina to watch my favorite wrestler ever's final wrestling match, Sting. Grew up a wrestling fan. So it reminds me of when like a wrestler or a referee would run into a match to stop something from happening. So he gets on the mic and he's like, listen, round 6, we're going to have no draws. Like you can't intentionally draw. You can't run out the clock and get a draw. He's like, I'm not having this happen. There's not going to be people missing the top 8 because 2 people up the field took a draw and like we're mid tournament. Like this is not. I don't know if it was in the tournament rules that got posted.
It was in the tournament rules. I just was reiterating it for the event.
He's just laying down the law, and it's like, oh, okay, and everyone was just like, cool, okay, I'm gonna go play my game now. So, anyways, I just love that moment. That feeling was great.
Okay.
Yeah, I try not to spring something like that on people without any warning. But, if I put it in the rules document, I posted the rules document and you didn't read it, it's on you. You get to hear me announce it live.
But I think you could have sprung that on people and it would have been fine. The vast majority of people were just there to get games of Sorcery, and they wouldn't pull those shenanigans.
I will tell you that the vast majority of the people there did not know until I said that there were no draws allowed. So, yeah.
Okay.
No,
cool.
I mean, the community was like, the whole vibe in the room the entire time was great. The sealed event, especially, like we had folks like pull a 10-year-old kid pulled the Avatar of Earth sketch curio, and like the room exploded. And, I think both of you guys were playing Fab back in the Tales of Aria days, but it had that same feeling of being at the Tales of Aria pre-release in Vegas, where like anytime someone cracked a fable, like the entire room just like broke up in applause and like everyone was freaking out. And yeah, it was just great to be able to recapture that.
That's awesome. So as the most competitively accomplished person on the podcast, Michael, do you have any questions as far as, or things that you noted as far as like the metagame or deck lists or anything you want to ask Zach about the game?
I was curious about the metagame. Were people just kind of like, were they just playing the cards they liked the most, or were people like, I think this deck's really good and that's why I want to play it?
From my perspective, I think, let's say there were 66 people.
Okay.
I bet 50 of the 66, if you walked up to them and said, what's your favorite sorcery card? They would tell you that card. And then you would say, is that card in your deck? And they would say yes, even if it's not a particularly good card. But I do think, there are probably 10 or 15 people there that are like killers. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like competitive, not necessarily a problem, but like they've obviously played a lot and they're here to ball. Yep. they're here to play the game. But yeah, I think the meta is really wild. Like, I don't know the top 8 breakdown, but I played 6 rounds and I played against 5 different avatars.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, I will say I think you were fairly lucky. Not in you got a variety of matchups there. The top 8 for the constructed event, we did have 4 Death Speakers. Obviously, they didn't make it to the finals. So yeah, I think everyone was prepared for that Death Speaker build, and the competitive players were building against it, and it was paying off, basically.
Yeah, I think particularly the more competitive players not on Death Speaker were ready to play against Death Speaker.
Absolutely.
That's good.
And also, I will tell you that I know of at least one local who went 4-2 during the constructed event, who like he's a casual hardcore player is kind of how I'd put it. He's very experienced. He's been playing Magic since alpha and beta, and but he wants to play decks that are fun, and he was running his like Root Spider and Devil's Egg deck, and like went 4-2 against an actually fairly competitive group. So
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4 out of 8 of the top 8 being Death Speaker makes sense to me. But it also makes sense to me then if the people were prepared for that deck, because I believe it won the last couple sorcery tournaments that were ran. I know it won Gen Con, and I know it won the most recent Sorcery League, beating the Enchantress. But
yeah,
there was no Enchantress in the top 8, right?
No, there was no Enchantress in the top 8. I've got thoughts about both of those things. I think with the way sorcery works, especially the way the meta is sitting right now, player skill is far, far more important than avatar selection. And talking about the last league, it was actually a tournament of champions, like interstitial thing that they did, where the best players from the league round did a elimination bracket. And yeah, it was Death Speaker and Enchantress, but the Enchantress was being played by Zalem from Discord, who is probably the most experienced and best sorcery player in the world right now. And the Death Speaker was being played by Ira, who used to be an Eric's Curious employee and is extremely experienced running crazy Death Speaker lists. So it's no surprise to me that those two made it. I don't think that any player, even an experienced Death Speaker player, could pick up Ira's Death Speaker list and run it to the top of a Sorcery-Con like size event. It's the player skill, the player familiarity with the deck is right now still a huge thing, and there's a ton of variety in the meta.
Okay, that's good. So there's no cards that you would say are like problematic or taking over the game. Like, I know the elements at the moment aren't necessarily the most balanced water, but at least of the decks that are competitively viable, nothing's like problematically too good, you would say.
Zach?
Yeah. So I still think that even with just one set, it's a large set. I think the meta is so unexplored, and I think it's really easy for a deck like the first time you play against a truly tuned deck, it has so many advantages just from being tuned. But at the end of the day, like if let's say Death Speaker is the best deck, which I don't necessarily think it is, but let's just say it is. There's a part of a perception reality piece here, which is that doesn't mean there's not answers to Death Speaker.
Mm-hmm.
And so if Death Speaker is the best deck and going to be popular, that should make certain other cards good or certain other avatars good. So then you start painting a picture of the meta. And I don't think it's like, as far as I've seen, I don't think there's any deck that's like 90-10 most of the time, right? Or like something like that. It may be like 60 or 65, or it may be advantaged into people that don't know how to play against this specifically. Because I think the first time you play against like an Enchantress that's good or a Death Speaker, you're just at a severe disadvantage. And I feel this way about a lot of Fab decks too, where it's like, Hamilton and I were recently testing some games this past weekend of Fab, and he's playing a deck I'd never played against, and it was like, oh, that's how that thing works. And Fab is so tightly wound that 1 or 2 points of value is usually the difference between the game between two tuned decks, two high level players. But Sorcery also, there's a level of variance that is built into the game intentionally. And I think it does a lot to close the skill gap, and then also the avatars are probably going to be the biggest problems if there's going to be a problem, because it's the thing that is just always on the board. Reminds me of the hero or the equipment or a weapon in Fab. Versus because of the way the unique rarity system works, even the elites, it's just so unreliable that you'll see that stuff. And that's part of what makes the Death Speaker so good, is anything you get, you can see again to get that, interplay effect, the Genesis ability. But you can't count on seeing Devil's Egg, right? Or whatever your unique of choice is, or your elites of choice. Versus, if a game of Fab goes on for a decent bit, you're probably going to see whatever, playing combo Bolton, kind of a thing. Roger. So I don't know. And there's not a lot of, outside like common sense, there's not a lot of tutoring. There's not a lot of recursion. There's not a lot of interrupts or actions, so they can't do that kind of busted stuff. So anyways, and you also have the site variants and which sites you're going to see. All that to say, I think there's a healthy amount of variance that even if a card were a traditional problem, it's probably not actually a problem in Sorcery. And then when it does hit the table, it's like this unique, crazy thing that does a crazy thing and everyone's happy about it. But also, you've got this unique, crazy thing in your deck that can also happen. And if you don't, then I don't know what you're doing anyway. Like, that's just kind of the game, right? And like, it's nowhere near as tightly wound as Fab, intentionally, I think. Yeah. So most games, Death's Door is one of the most genius mechanics there is. It creates this natural tension point and like, can you get me? And it does a lot for this game to make it feel closer than it probably was on paper. But I think that variance does a good number on preventing things from being overly busted, and just the interplay of it's hard. It's so fundamental. The game is so fundamental in terms of building board advantage, right? Resource advantage, table advantage, making good trades. Anyways, I don't get that sense, but there probably is. It reminds me of the Death Speaker winning Gen Con. He was probably on a more tuned Death Speaker deck than anyone's seen at that point, so he's just naturally going to win like 95% of his games. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean Death Speaker's a problem. It just means that the rest of the game hasn't caught up to him yet.
Fair enough. Okay. Any other questions from Michael? Oh, sorry, Dave. Or did you have something to say on that?
I was just going to say the closest thing Sorcery has to a problematic card, I think, is Sorcerer itself. The card draw from Sorcerer is insane in a game that doesn't have card draw. I'm not sure it's a problem, but it's probably the closest thing to keep an eye on.
I have a take on this, actually. I don't disagree necessarily.
Okay.
But I will say that, so for the first, 5 or 6 turns, you're pretty much just playing sites.
Yeah.
So Sorcerer is effectively blank for 5 or 6 turns. So I played Avatar of Earth, side note. Obviously I didn't win the tournament, so whose opinion should you be trusting? But Avatar of Earth's ability, while I'm also still just tapping, it's like turn 3 or 4 a lot of times, I'll grapple shot into my opponent and hit them for a lot of damage, and then instead of playing a side, I'll swing again for a bunch of damage. So I found, like with Avatar of Earth into Sorcerer as an example, and I lost to it was Gilbert that won the tournament, right? I lost to him in the Swiss. He was one of my losses, the guy that won the tournament, and it was a close game. It was a super super close game. It was one of my favorites from the weekend. But for the first 6 turns, he's blank. And so I'm kind of playing a rushy Avatar of Earth deck that I'm getting value out of early. And I need to fit. The longer that game goes on, the more he's advantaged. And so I don't know if Sorcerer is a problem. And Sorcerer won the tournament, but there were a lot of other avatars in that top 8. And even at the X and 2 record that weren't Sorcerer. And again, who knows? It's unexplored. It's the floor on Sorcerer is high because card draw is always good in a game about cards. But if you can make use out of the ability in that first 6 turns, that's how I think you get the advantage over the Sorcerer. So it needs to be really good because he's banking on turns 6 through 12.
Yeah.
Even happening.
I will say that every form of mana ramp that they end up adding to the game shortens the warm-up time for Sorcerer, right? So he
Yep.
doesn't have to wait till turn 6 if he drew 2 of his cores on after his mulligan or whatever, right?
But he also used 2 cards to play the course, so now he's down 2 cards.
Yeah, that's true.
Just
It's
you know,
but he replaces them in one. Okay. I don't think
Well,
anyone's
like,
fallen to ban sorcerer here, but yeah.
It just cost a card to get that.
True,
right?
It does.
So like, but you're not wrong. It speeds you up, but also like you could have had any other card in your hand anyway, instead of that card.
Yeah, you could have been an Avatar of Earth or a Battle Mage and use that turn to just beat your opponent down.
Okay. Anything else from you, Michael?
I do think it was sorry. I think jumping back quite a bit, it was really interesting what you said about like people that are playing against decks and they haven't seen people do things with decks before. I think I watched the finals of that tournament where it was the Death Speaker versus the Enchantress deck, and the way that Ira was positioning sites to play around the Enchantress, wanting to put their auras on like the 4 things, but then if one of the corners is in the void, you can't animate it or it just dies. I'm just like, this is crazy. There's so many like complex interactions happening here.
Absolutely. Yeah. The game, it's one of those games that, it starts off on the surface, it looks like fairly straightforward and simple, and then you just keep looking and it keeps getting deeper and deeper. The whole, like, there's all sorts of theory about site play and the correct location to be playing sites and how to play sites aggressively or defensively, that you can play the game for years in a kitchen table setting and never ever worry about, never see. But it's there if you want to really like dive that deeply into the game.
For sure. And we even see that in our games, Michael, where we're still, I don't think we played a game yet where we're just like, oh yeah, we know how every single interaction between all these cards at work, no questions here. Like even today in our games, we were like, how does this work? And we're like, got to figure this out now.
I also remember turn 2 of our game, I went in the tank for like 30 seconds. I'm like, do I place the site forward or do I place it to the side? I wasn't sure what to do.
Yeah, it's a
big decision though. A lot of times
it matters a lot.
It does, yeah.
And then, I guess for mattering a lot and balancing for sites, if we want to talk about limited and how you felt sealed and draft went, because I definitely have some pretty strong opinions between how the basic land system works in limited at the moment.
I want to hear Zach's take on this. Yeah.
I definitely have a take. So the basic lands, so the sealed, or I guess the limited tournament was sealed 6 rounds, cut to top 8 draft. And in both formats, you, at least at this tournament, you could use the basic lands from each element. And then you could use Sorcerer, and you could also use the pre-con avatars, if you so chose, for some reason.
It's all of the avatars that show up in that token slot in the back of packs. So the land slot, basically.
Yeah. So I think the basic abilities on those basic sites is like super good. Free resource, a free 1 health blocker, from a simple village guy, and then also the free damage from the red sites.
Yeah.
And there's a 4th element, right? I forget.
Don't worry about it.
I think it's like gray. No, it's bluish. Yeah. Water.
I've never seen it in play in a limited game before, so don't worry about it.
The worst part is that site has the best, I think, ability of the like interplay. Well, air is probably better, but being able to scry your deck, that's just good, right? If that was on a different element,
so the 3 of us are like,
all right,
things that affect the board is very, very powerful. And it doesn't affect the board.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's definitely more of a constructed card, because obviously in constructed, when you're trying to dig for those uniques, then that gets a bit way better. But when you're just playing a limited deck full of like 2 3s, it doesn't really matter what you're putting to the top or bottom.
So because you get to play these basics, so we did we just did for the first time, we used to do a lot of gameplay videos where we do commentary and we have like the score on the screen and cards and all kinds of crazy stuff. So we filmed the finals of the constructed event and the limited event, and we just recorded the commentary on those finals. We also filmed me actually drafting in the top 8, which was cool.
That's sick. And
Steve and I were just commentating as I'm going through and making all my picks and stuff. And my limited thesis is that I start out with the idea that I'm going to play 4 air, 4 earth, and 4 fire sites. And then I'll adjust that based on what's in my sealed pool or what I draft. And a lot of times I end up on like a 5-4-3 or like a 6-3-3. And then you can basically aggressively mulligan to shape it however you need it to be shaped, especially on the sites. And if you know what the bottom 2 sites of your site deck are, like it really dictates a lot of what you're doing. And a lot of times in limited, you're gonna get to 5 or 6 sites on the table. Like it's just gonna happen. So if you mulligan 2, you kind of know you're gonna end up seeing, see 3, so 5, and then if you see 4 more, you're gonna see 7, 8, 9 of your sites, kind of thing, out of 12. Anyways, so if you start there, because those abilities are just so powerful. And then I actually, this is the first game I've ever said this sentence about. I think I like the sealed environment more than the draft environment. And it's because the floor on sealed decks is a lot higher.
Yeah, I agree.
In draft, the floor and ceiling are like crazy. And it's so easy just to
have somebody pass you like a bomb or something like that.
Yeah, or just like, you open a pack and there's no bombs and it's like all water cards and you're just like, what am I doing here? Or you're in a bad seat, right? Like there's just a lot of like, I've had some really bad drafts happen in Sorcery, whereas there's some seal pools that are really crazy good. But if I had to like scale 1 to 10, I think most seal pools are like 6 to 8, and some are like 9s or 10s, and some are bad, but rarely are they just strictly bad. Because it's just, again, just fundamental making trades. You're going to have creatures. You're going to have some removal spells. You're going to have land. Anyways, so I start with that theory, and then I really enjoy sealed. And I think there's a lot of skill expression that happens because it is just so fundamental. And can you make like really weird cards that you've never seen synergize and work and somehow make trades that are, in your favor? And do you know what your bombs are and how to play around that and stuff? But I do think particularly the draft format, if the base locations you had access to didn't have abilities, it would probably be, it's tough to say it would be better, because sometimes having access to those guaranteed abilities on the sites is sort of what makes a sealed pool work. But anyways, I really enjoy limited formats in pretty much every game I play. And so the sealed particularly, I don't know, I find it super enjoyable. And we've done a lot of sealed. We did a kind of like a 10-hour company. Our lead developer is remote and he came in from out of town, and we just had like a team-wide jam session. And that was like, awesome. It's just so fun. Every seal pool felt so different. Every deck felt so, even we play 2 or 3 of the game with the same deck, and it just can feel wildly different. And then you're on Sorcerer. So like most of the time you're on a 25 card deck, you're going to see most of your cards. And I think that's also really important. Like what you mulligan sets it up for the late game. And then also if you want to see it in limited particularly, I think you can see it. In constructed, you lose too fast. Like you're not going to get to see nearly as many cards most of the time. So I really enjoy that. And it is kind of, you have to be scrappy. And I just love that, like that feeling. That's
was there ever any issue in all of your sealed play with just like not having enough, like, or like in Flesh and Blood, it's called fatigue, where you just run out of actual like cards in deck? Has that ever happened to you? Because I've had a couple of limited games go like that now, but I didn't know how prevalent that was in your experiences now.
I have not had that happen.
Okay.
I don't know if I've had that happen ever.
Oh,
no. I did have a sealed game last Friday that I got to the last card in my spell book, but I still had plenty of sites in my atlas, so I wasn't in danger of losing the game to fatigue. But yeah, that's, in my experience, very rare.
Maybe Michael and I just opened a lot of removal, I guess.
Yeah, that's possible.
Could also be a play style thing.
True.
Where we're both like fairly defensive in nature in card games.
I don't know what you're talking about, Michael. I'd never be defensive. That's very rude of you to say that.
Yeah. Well, you know me. I'm usually a very defensive control player. In the games that I play too.
Yep, that's what I think of when I think of you, Zach.
Yeah, I'm glad I built that brand around myself. But I think it's just so a lot of times hypothetical, like in my seal pool, I think I had 1 or 2 Amazon warriors. But like you play that air site to get up to the resource that you need to put the warriors down, you play it, and it's like there's only so many cards that actually just remove that card straight up.
Right.
And so I play it, and like if you don't have something, sometimes I just like start smacking you for 2 or 3 turns in a row, right? And there's not like there's moments, and then I think the main thing and the finals from the draft event, if I do say so myself, we just did the commentary on that. It's really wild to watch, and like I would be curious to get your take if you watch me draft, and then like how in the heck do you even win with this deck? And it's just there's some wild stuff going on, which is kind of cool to see. But it's been impressive to watch just how creative plays can get with some of these cards together that you would never consider for constructed. So I feel that way in constructed a lot of times. You guys were talking earlier about interactions that you've never quite seen before. Mm-hmm. And then in the sealed tournament, it was just like even crazier because in sealed, a lot of times I'm on 3 elements, which is not normal in constructed. I'm on cards that I just have to be on. One of my favorite cards from my draft deck was Flanking Maneuver, which I would never play in constructed. But that card was a bomb in that game.
Lots of night moves.
Is that the night move draw card?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's you just wait till you see the game. It's a beautiful card. Beautiful card.
Cool. But yeah, I do agree that you would touch on this briefly with the sites having their dynamic disparities in power level, that there should be something that should be done for limited play. I think that's something that the team is well aware of, and it's something that Michael and I have even been in discussions for. So I just want to let you guys know that like it's not lost on us that I think that everybody on Eric's Curiosity knows that like water is very bad and limited, and it's not really something that they want to have happening going forward.
I haven't signed an NDA, so I can speculate about this, but there have been hints dropped that, in Arthurian Legends, the sites are going to be more geared towards limited play. So we'll probably be seeing sites that just have threshold on them. I don't know. Again, I'm just speculating.
Who knows?
Yeah, it would make a lot of sense to me if the base sites were just base sites that provide a threshold. Yeah. Because like water has everything going against it. That's also why draft is so tough. When you just you'll see it.
You have to be the water seat.
Video. It's like I get past a pack of 6 cards left, and it's all water cards, and it's like, okay, so there's 6 of us are going to get just a dead draw, basically. Besides the one person that decided to play water, and they're probably going to lose their top 8 game anyway. Because water is so synergistic with itself, right? You need so much water going on, and it's so even in draft, it's hard to do. So. It almost reminds me of, a Fab limited format where I'm trying to think of a good example, but like there's just a hero that's like.
It'd probably be if you ever drafted Arcane Rising and then like there were just like 6 wizard cards left in the pack, and it's just like, well, how do I ever do this? And the one Kano player is just like, yes, I'm feasting.
Yeah.
And in any Fab format when like when there's like one class that's just not actually draftable, it creates a lot of problems, right? So the more you have this, and that's what makes the other elements work, is like the more you can play all of it, the better. So there's 2 problems. One, the base sites you have access to are just so good.
Right.
So if water cards are dead, if the base sites in the site pack don't do anything for you, and if the other sites in the pack aren't even actually that draftable, because it's like, would I rather have a free 1-cost card on my Earth site or draft this, elite insert name of site here? Even like some cards I consider super good, like Rift Valley. I don't think I would ever draft that. Like I will always choose a Bodee over that. So you just end up with like a lot of undraftable cards, and it doesn't feel like That's why I think I enjoy the sealed format so much better, because I think you could get into some water shenanigans in sealed if you had the right cards show up. But drafting, it in particular, it does not feel like the set was necessarily balanced around that. That's okay. That's totally okay. And again, none of this matters. It's just a kitchen table game. You can do whatever you want, right? And even this tournament, it's not like there's $100,000 on the line or something. I see that big check back there, Hamilton.
That's at Sorcery-Con 2. I thought Sorcery-Con 2 was the 100K. No?
Yeah,
if I end up with
was saying
100K, I don't know if I'm throwing a convention with that 100K.
Well, that's kind of the beautiful thing for if there's no official organized play, no support, you guys can create the Sorcery High Rollers League, and there's no like, no, don't do that. You could just have like 10K entries, and it's just like Zach Bunn shows up with his 10K entry, and Michael Hamilton shows up with his 10K. Oh, no, we can't compete competitively now, Michael. Oh, no, we can't play in this 10K entry event.
Oh, yeah.
Unlucky.
Wait, you can't compete in official events, right? But what if it's just like...
No rules here, man.
That's a really good question.
You can totally play at Sorcery-Con. This is the Wild West, dude.
Yeah,
no one cares. We just want you there playing.
Yeah, honestly, that is true. Like,
maybe
I'm not going to have the $10,000 buy-in
that says we can't because we didn't make an official rule.
That sounds like Eric's Curiosa. Yeah.
Then there's no official rule stopping us. We could take all of our insider knowledge and crush Michael because we totally have everything solved and broken every single meta deck, right?
But you still don't have access to the other cards yet, so...
Yeah.
All right.
Definitely happening.
Go ahead, Michael.
I don't know. I think like if the tournaments are not for very much stakes, then it doesn't feel like we're taking advantage of insider information by being there playing or extra knowledge that we would have. But I think that is really still kind of a gray area.
Yeah, I was thinking if we ever went to a Sorcery-Con, we'd set up like a little side booth area, like play a tester, and then people could come up and like battle us for a boosty pack and meet us and have a good time that way. But like, I don't know.
Sure.
I mean,
kind of like how LSS people did that for a while. Maybe they still do it.
I think the vibe of the community would be, it doesn't matter what you've been testing or what you know or what you've seen. Just show up and play and participate. Like
everybody says that until Michael Hamilton walks through the door. Everybody.
And
they're like, oh no, why did this guy show up and play and walk through the door?
Yeah, but even then, I just don't think, I really don't know how much it even matters. Like
I will say that several people who competed at Sorcery-Con are also testers for Eric's Curiosa.
Okay.
And none of them made it to the top 8.
I drafted at Gen Con and played Ira in the finals. No, I played Steven in the finals. I played Ira in the second round and beat Ira. And I had no idea what I was doing. So I think that's just the built-in variance, of the game. But I don't put a lot of stock in that matter. And there's just no stakes. It is different if you had to qualify and there's tons of money and stuff on the line, but like, I don't know, man. If you were at Sorcery-Con, I think more players would be disappointed if you were just sitting there not playing than if you were actually just participating.
That's fair.
Yeah. You got to at least play like a 4-player game or something crazy.
Yeah.
Like, can't just sit on the side and do nothing.
We're really
I haven't
interested
played a 4-player game.
Yeah,
yet.
we haven't done that yet.
Oh, yeah, you got to give it a shot.
Yeah.
Team tournaments are the best.
Yeah, we're really interested in getting that going, basically. Like, it just seems like a really interesting idea, because if you're having a kitchen table game, like having a 4-player arena match just seems like all the better to get more people involved in it.
Yeah.
100%.
The community developed one that the Seattle community has put together is a whole lot of fun, and yeah, it's super awesome. Zach, have you played the 4-player yet?
I have not played the 4-player yet, but we brought home a 4-player mat, and I'm very excited to play. I like the John is our resident video design guru, and he was the one shooting the documentary while we were there, doing the hard work while I was over goofing around playing games of sorcery. But he was able to sneak in I think he played twice, 2 of the 4-player games where you sat across from someone and they were on your team, and you like have shared mana pools, but you have your own hand. And then, you're functioning, and they're passing rolling boulders back and forth to each other.
That sounds bad. You take 4 damage.
But it's like you send it across the realm and it hits everything, and then you move a unit. I move my unit over to, do my thing or whatever. Teleport it or whatever it is. But he literally did not stop talking about that format. Like, his teammate was a random person that he met, and they really vibed together. And then the format and the way it played. And I love team tournaments. I wish every game ever would do more with team tournaments. I wish there were more fab team tournaments. I wish there were everything team tournaments. If I were choosing team tournaments or one heads up tournaments, if I had the choice every time, I don't think I'd ever play a one-on-one tournament ever again. That's how much I like team tournaments. And Sorcery is perfect for it. So they're just way more social, and you always have someone that you're enjoy being around with you, and it breaks a lot of the tension. And then being on team's fun. It's just a different vibe. Losing and winning is better together. So anyways, I'm a big team tournament proponent. If you're out there listening and you're organizing events, add team tournaments, team tournaments.
I'm right there with you, Zach. I love the team format, the what was that, the calling in Vegas for which set, the fab set,
Uprising.
That was it. That team tournament was some of the most fun I've ever had playing fab. It was great. And I really, really wanted to do some team tournament shenanigans for Sorcery-Con, but we also Alex and I are just two people, and we were planning it, and we were we got to be realistic about what we can do with this first event. Smart. Here. Let's keep it reasonable, and maybe Sorcery-Con 2, you'll be playing just team tournaments all the way up.
Sorcery-Con 2 for 2v2.
Exactly.
Ooh, 2 Sorcery, 2 Furious.
Put it on the box. Ship it.
Now I'm excited. We got to make a road trip over to the Team Covenant studio and get some 2v2 Covenant v Manor sorcery battles going. That's I
want to see this on stream. I need to see this.
We might try to give you a reason to come to Oklahoma at some point soon.
Good. Yeah.
Ooh.
We're in. And Michael, we can use all of our insider knowledge now to beat them up. It'll be great.
Dropping love potions on them left and right.
Yeah, and King Arthur.
And Merlin and Guinevere. They're all out there.
All right. Any final thoughts from you, Dave? Any final conclusions, thoughts, musings?
It has been quite a trip, just seeing this sorcery convention go from a crazy plan to a whole bunch of people getting excited for it, to a whole bunch of people literally flying from everywhere in the country to Seattle to hang out with us for a weekend and play games. It's just been an amazing experience for me personally. And I want to thank everyone who attended and everyone who played and made it such an awesome and memorable event. It was incredible. And I'm still getting over it. I'm still exhausted.
I believe it. How about you, Zach? Are you ready to transition back into the grindy fab muckmire for the Pro Tour, or do you wish you were still in Sorcery-Con?
Oh, a little both. This past weekend, I started dipping my toes back into the fab world, and it again, team stuff is just great. Hanging out with the Wolfpack testing this weekend was really great. I saw your comment, Michael, about feeling the same way. It was really, really nice. It's nice, but. I'd say David and Alex, kudos to you guys for putting on that event. It was very well run. It was awesome. I think the vibe there was great. If you're listening to this and you don't already play Sorcery, haven't checked Sorcery out, I can't recommend it highly enough. It's a really great, I know you guys mostly cover fab. Kind of like if you're in that boat and you're playing fab all the time, it's a really incredible secondary TCG. Only one set a year. You definitely don't need a lot. The way the rarity and the variance works and stuff. The precons for this game are some of the best precons I've ever seen a game put out. Super fun, very evocative. I always describe it as it's like a 90s card game with modern sensibilities. It's just doing things that other card games don't. And I think it's a really nice palate cleanser. I think the kind of people that it's speaking to is very different than a traditional TCG. And so as someone who's been in the industry a long time and cares about this hobby immensely, it's really cool to see that, to see the kind of people that can be served in this kind of bottom up organized play approach that is putting it to the players to figure out what they want to do. And honestly, just this, joy of people being able to get together in the flesh and blood and play these games across the table. So, huge fan of Eric's Curioso, the publisher of the game. Worth checking out. If you don't want a super serious all the time game, it's a great game. If you want it to be that game for you, I think it can be. But anyways, love this game. Love the community. It was really cool. That was the first like in-person sorcery big event that I've done. And it was definitely unique. The documentary would be cool that we're putting out about it. It's going to take a little bit to do, but like, this is a different vibe of a game from head to toe. And it's cool to see that. I think diversity is good. And I think this is going to appeal to a lot of people that aren't traditionally into super competitive, organized play, heavy from top down approaches. So thanks again, David and Alex, for putting it on. And Roger and Michael, of course, thank you guys for having us. And thank you for continuing to do what you do. I know creating content takes a lot of work and time and effort, and community creators like you guys are the heartbeat of these communities. So keep doing it. And if you're out there listening and you haven't told Michael and Roger in a minute that you love what they're doing and appreciate them, do it.
Yeah, it really feeds Michael's ego.
Absolutely.
That's the most important part here, is keeping his ego high.
Yeah, also just include how attractive you think they are and how smart they are and how successful and how envious you are of their lifestyles, testing games and going to tournaments and, flying all over to play games, that whole thing. No, but really, thank you guys. I know you're a huge treasure to the Fab community and great friends. So love to see you guys continue to do this. Happy to be on whenever. And thanks for inviting me to be here.
Thanks, Zach.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. And thanks for the kinds words, Zach.
Do you want to try to top those final words, Michael? Or are you good?
I did have something I wanted to say, and then Zach about sorcery. So I'm ready to go watch Zach's top 8 draft. I'm ready to watch the finals. Then he said all the really touching stuff, and I'm like, oh, thanks, Zach.
So you don't want to say that? Okay. You're just excited for all the sweet sorcery content that he's producing?
Yeah.
To be clear, I'm not producing almost anything. I just record the commentary, but Steven and mostly John doing the editing and production. And he's a wizard of that stuff. I'm excited. The pandemic, we started streaming a lot. And so we're kind of getting back into produced video world. And it's cool to do it. It's cool to be back in, and I'm excited to share that. I think those games are worth watching. If you're out there and you're curious, that's also a good place to start. If you've never heard of sorcery and you just want to check out what, higher level sorcery looks like. But even though I don't even know what that means at this point.
Should definitely watch the 12-hour beta launch live stream Team Covenant did. That is the perfect way to get a crash course in sorcery.
That's a long piece of content. I don't know about all that.
Yeah, for sure. And I imagine the gameplay just gets better and better as time goes on, right? That's just one of those things. As you get more experience over the course of the stream, you guys just keep making less and less mistakes. It's this perfect place. Yeah.
I think about 10 and a half hours in, we had a charcuterie board and some, I don't remember if it was beer or wine or what, but that's really when it went right off the
cocktails showed up, and then just.
Well, the next time you're learning how to play sorcery at a very high level, Team Covenant, always remember